Oh man, we're live again, and boy, am I caffeinated. This is COFOH Live Undead. I am your host, Daniel Crosier, and I am joined by the amazing Ricky Glore!
You want to have something on my face?
Ricky, how are you, sir?
I am doing fantastic. That is the most big-time wrestling intro I've ever had. I thought you were going to be like, and I got a question for you, brother.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Mean Gene.
Snap into it. Ooh.
I always feel like that's one of the saddest things that I know about wrestling is that Randy the Macho Man Savage is like big and roided out as he was and such a big personality. Apparently a really, really good guy too. Like him dying by having a heart attack on the freeway and then having a car accident seems like the most like I mean some people are more morbid than others, but like it's hard for me not to think of that and not think of him going, "Oh, brother," and like just like careening into like if you were to think about anyone having a heart attack, that's the one impression of like someone that I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's how they went.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's devastating and understated too, right?
It's my parents. We would visit Florida pretty often in Christmas time and Florida growing up. We're from Northern Kentucky. And one time my parents were going to this antique store opening.
Yeah.
In like Largo, Florida. And I would say I'm like 10, 12 years old, between 10 and 12. And my parents are like, do you want to go with us or do you want to stay home with your brother, who's 5 years older, and just hang out at the pool, play N64 GoldenEye, or go to the beach?
Cool.
Do you want to come with us to this antique store opening in Largo, Florida, like 35 minutes away? And I was like, no, I'm going to stay here. This is great. Parents come back home, digital cameras are a thing. And they're like, hey, look who was at the opening of this random antique store in Largo, Florida. Randy the Macho Man Savage and Hulk Hogan in NWO gear because it was Hulk Hogan's now ex-wife's antique store.
Oh my gosh.
Like who you didn't meet. The last two people you'd expect at an antique store opening.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That would be so awesome. It's like basically it's two bulls in the China store, right?
Yeah. We got some old shit to sell you, brother.
Yeah. Oh, put that down, brother. You're gonna break
that. Oh, that's a relic, brother.
Yeah. Oh, that's delicate.
I think it's ironic that the person whose catchphrase was brother turned out to be racist.
Yeah, true. Oh, geez. Yeah, Ricky, let's chat a little bit more about you and how you got into comedy and filmmaking, specifically, coming up with Sweetmeats.
It all started, I think, both comedy and horror and filmmaking can be blamed, I think, on my dad, who maybe a little bit blame on myself with ADHD as a child. So we would stay up really late. And since he had to stay up with me, he would just put on the TV kind of whatever he wanted to watch, even though it was highly inappropriate for like a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. Nice. Like he did do like the proper thing of a beginning, like an introduction. Like I remember one of the first series of movies we'd watch would be the Hope and Crosby Road Pictures. And then we watched the Martin and Lewis. Marx Brothers, Three Stooges, and then there would be like Abbott and Costello, and then Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So there you get Bela Lugosi, Glenn Strange as Frankenstein, not Glenn Ford, Glenn Strange, Lon Chaney Jr. As the Wolfman, and so we watched that, and like, the movie holds up fantastic for horror and comedy because it's not played parody. Like the monsters are the legit monsters. Like when Frankenstein throws a lady out the window, she's dead.
Yep.
Like she doesn't bounce on an awning and like walk away living. It's just like, well, she's no longer in the movie. Dracula is ostensibly a vampire. It's not Bela Lugosi playing or thinking he's a vampire, someone thinking they're a vampire. So after that movie, my dad's like, "Oh, were you cool with that? Like that didn't bother you? Now here's all the Universal horror movies. Now here's all the Hammer horror movies. Now here's the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now like just Phantasm, everything under the sun."
Nice.
I saw it way too young of an age, but similarly, he did that with comedy. So he introduced me to like the comedy that was hip to him when he graduated in 75, which is like the first year of Saturday Night Live. Nice. Concurrently around that time, Comedy Central's running like the 87 to like 89, 92 SNL, which contains like my favorite cast members like Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey, Jan Hooks, that whole group, Mike Myers. And I'm falling in love with Phil Hartman, Steve Martin, Albert Brooks. So a lot of my comedy and horror are kind of running parallels because there's a lot of like drive-in movie exploitative comedy at that time too. Like Blazing Saddles is an exploitation film as far as comedy goes. It's exploiting comedy. The Jerk is an exploitive comedic movie. But then you get things like Motel Hell.
Yeah.
That at a young age, I was like, this is weird and fun because part of the movie plays like an old like 40s, 30s like romantic Western with Rory Calhoun, who would star in those movies back then. It's almost so we're in and correct me if I'm wrong, I think Motel Hell comes out in 1980, 81 maybe.
Yeah,
early on in the slasher boom. Like
82 maybe.
Maybe it's made on the heels of whatever anybody has as far as horror goes after Halloween. It's let's get into production.
Right.
But two movies that live in that like 4 years of that boom, or even like the first couple years of that boom, are already super smart satires of the genre.
Right.
Which is oh my god, why am I blanking on it? Motel Hell is one of them, but then Slumber Party Massacre.
Right, because initially that was written as to be a satire.
Yeah, and I think if you watch it, like it's still the reason why it's still talked about today beyond the Bonzo sequel, kind of similar to like Prom Night. Like, does the Prom Night series get mentioned because of Jamie Lee Curtis, or partly because the first one is this own part of the genre, and then part two is this other like what's working right now in the genre? Right. Elm Street, Dreams, Hellraiser, like throw it all, Carrie.
Like, whatever's trending at the time. It's like put that into repackage it.
Oh yeah, and I love it. But so Slumber Party Massacre, Motel Hell, satirizing the genre that is just kind of kicked big, and then you have like things like Student Bodies, which is the airplane of horror movies.
Yep.
Not super as well known. Pandemonium with Paul Rubens. So I'm seeing all of this stuff, and I'm having a hard time delineating between what is good, really good horror, and what is really good comedy and satire. Because being a fan of like Paul Rubens and Phil Hartman, you get things that are a little darker, a little weirder, a little bit more abstract. I mean, a classic one is, I think, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd's Neighbors. Like,
Right.
I
God, I
think
haven't.
that is such a fantastic dark comedy. Does it work
Yeah.
completely? Probably not in my mind. I think the
Right.
roles should have been flipped the way they wanted.
Yeah, I haven't seen that movie since it was on HBO back in the 80s.
Yeah. And so that's
Man.
like, so my dad used to have like Cinemax and stuff, and we'd rent. I mean, my favorite things right now, and I feel like such, I feel like such an old man of just being overly nostalgic for video stores. And I know that's a
Yeah.
Kish thing right now, but like I just got Vinegar Syndrome's release of the documentary Mom and Pop.
Oh, cool.
And it's that documentary and a documentary called At the Video Store are two
Yeah.
really great docs about basically other nerds like yourself telling the same stories you've been telling people. Who are just like, no, look, it smelled like smoke. There was a curtain that you like. There was the horror
Right.
section. You look at all the boxes. There were different size, but like everybody tells the same story, but there's that warm and fuzzy feeling that
Yeah.
you get just reminiscing.
Yeah, there's that sense of nostalgia. Yeah, Vinegar Syndrome has a headquarters here in Denver, and they've got their DVD store, the Archive, which is absolutely tremendous. It's so cool to be able to walk through that and see all the cool new releases that they've got, and all these old videos and new finds that I've never even heard of.
No, I mean that's been the best thing with my dad, who introduced so many things to me. Not
Yeah.
that he's not internet savvy enough, but he isn't finger as on pulse as I am of like when these newly discovered things
Right.
from when he was younger come out that he's never heard of. Like
Mm.
oh gosh, what's the one? The Severed Arm, is that the correct title? Where
Ooh.
it's a group of guys, it's late 70s, early 80s. They
Okay.
go caving. They go
Okay.
cave diving. And one's a doctor, or one's an accountant, one's a lawyer, one's a banker. They've been friends, but like I think for this bachelor party, they're gonna go caving, and
Nice.
they get trapped in,
Ooh.
and you start seeing, and this is late 70s, early 80s. Like it looks like a set. It doesn't look that great, but it does have that like kind of Descent vibe.
Yeah.
Um, and a little
Ooh.
bit of what's the Alive, where the soccer team got
Right.
but anyway, so a quick synopsis of that is what they did psychologically with the opening to be the reason why someone would come back and kill people is all the guys, they got to a certain point and they're like, we should draw straws, not all of us should die, we should draw straws to who we should eat. The
Ooh.
doctor's like, I know how to properly cauterize. And he's like, we'll do it in stages. We'll draw straws for each different appendage for each one of us.
Ugh.
And
Yeah.
so
Damn.
the opening, like just the cold opening,
Yeah.
the Casey Becker opening of Scream, just for this movie, is this happening. The one guy pulls the straw, doesn't want to give up his arm. They cut
Mhm.
it off, and as soon as they cut it off, people come there to save them.
Oh.
And then
Yeah.
they flash
They're
10
right.
years. They flash 10 years later, and someone's going around. It couldn't be this friend. He's been in a nut house.
Right.
Someone's going around and killing all the people who were involved in that day.
Ooh. Damn. Damn. Yeah, that sounds amazing. I myself have not. I don't think I've heard of it either till just now. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
But that's, I mean, there is, just because you've never, I mean, look, I've seen a lot of a lot of turd burglars,
Yeah.
mainly ones that like feature like Peter Cushing, and my dad's like, but Peter Cushing's in it, and I'm like, oh my god, like this is, or Basil Rathbone's in it, like I don't care, like these movies are awful, but there are some of these you've never heard of, and they just literally are these lost gems, and then you have ones like that are getting more of a resurgence, like Thriller, A Cruel Picture, or Miss
Mhm.
45,
Yeah.
that people hadn't seen, that they're kind of rediscovering. That it's cool to see movies like that still kind of punch you in the gut, even though they're over 45 years old.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of akin to, going to like the record store and buying the album, that you've never heard of because of the album art.
That's one of my favorite things to do. I mean, but that just goes back to the video. That is the closest thing to the video store
Yep.
experience. To tie this into to Sweetmeats. So the reason why I do comedy and horror is I don't think I can make anything that is legit scary enough to just
Mhm.
be horror. And
Right.
did not say that maybe I couldn't possibly do that, but I tend to write a little bit more abstractly, where I have an idea and a story and a character and an emotion, and then as I write, it just comes out comedic.
Okay.
Either if that's abstract or it's darkly comedic.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's just what I was drawn to as a kid, and that's just more how my taste has refined as I've gotten older, and maybe that has something to do with more of that Motel Hell, uh, Slumber Party Massacre thing. Is I'm looking at the genre more satirically,
Yeah.
um, especially now in an age where this isn't like poo-pooing on anything hardcore. I just don't understand why we have to be so meta about everything. Like
Right.
Scream is great
Yeah.
for being meta about the genre, but I don't understand why everything has to be um, as meta. And so for me, when I'd go to the video store and there'd be a big box,
Hmm.
which served its purpose, was they want to catch your attention by having the biggest fucking box. Uh, Things like Microwave Massacre, which had that amazing box art
Yeah.
and like the head in this big industrial microwave, or like even like a chopping mall.
Hmm.
But
Oh,
then
such a great poster too.
you'd rent it, or I mean, chopping mall was named something else and then
Yep.
was like 30 minutes longer, and then they're like, this isn't working, like we're just
Right.
gonna sell this on marketing. um but things like Microwave Massacre, where you get it, you look at it and you rent it, and then it turns out to be this like Catskills, like overweight middle-aged comedian who's doing like a Rodney Dangerfield knockoff impression, and
Mm.
it's supposed to be funny, but it's like definitely not funny, and it nothing captures the box art in the movie, like doesn't even
Oh,
come
yeah.
close. Not that like I tried to make that way with Sweetmeats, but like there are definitely aspects of that I've kind of leaned into and slashed embraced,
Hmm.
because when telling anybody that it was a dark comedy musical horror movie,
Right.
that is, I mean, it's a hard sell to get anyone interested, but then it's a hard sell to hopefully make it cohesive and coherent.
Yeah. But for me, when you just say that's a horror comedy musical, I'm there. I'm front row. Uh, yeah. Of course, I'm that guy that also really loved like Poultrygeist and enjoyed hashtag shits, Shakespeare shitstorm, because I mean those had well, Poultrygeist was definitely a musical, and then shitstorm had musical elements to it and stuff. But I dig that stuff. I like really bizarre obscure things. So I'm totally into what you're selling.
I mean, I hope so. I hope it's not too much of a bait and switch, because as much as Mark Schoenbach of Status Art Designs did our final poster, and I
Mhm.
love it. It has all those elements of like those old. I mean, we weren't even like really, really, really trying to make it be indicative of those old VHS box arts. It just the pieces of the project kind of lent itself to look like that, and
Mhm.
almost I can see where marketing, when they would get things like Microwave Massacre or video
Yeah.
violence, and they'd be like, what's the image, like how are we going to sell this? Boom, it's this, like get it out there.
Right.
Because then when you watch the movie, it plays like a southern exploitation, like a Smokey and the Bandit meets Motel Hell meets Little Shop of Horrors, and
Nice.
it's it is an odd little movie, and I am not embarrassed or worried, but I'm anxious to be in an audience in the theater with people as this thing happens to them, because I think there's going to be a little bit of, okay. And then maybe there's some laughter that comes out of it because everything is played 100% straight in the movie.
Yeah.
And you're going to see it and you're going to be like, no, this comes off like a fucking cartoon. Like, but I swear, when you see it, you're going to be like, all these relationships are deathly serious, like no pun intended. But then I'm just excited to get the movie. We're in post-production right now. I'm doing the final sound, dropping in the score and everything and songs, and then handing it off to post-production mixing probably within the next week or so. And then after that, it gets sent to Troma, and whatever life it has, it's completely in their hands after that.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the creative process? Like how this was conceived, because as I understand it, you had a number of friends. You went to go make one movie that didn't get financing, and then decided to pivot and do this instead.
It's funny because now the question is Open House, the movie that you're referencing, gonna happen? Because what happened was we had a dark comedy horror movie musical planned where the music is diegetic, kind of like this one, but that one was more, the story was it's these realtors who are showing these houses, and they are also Broadway musical theater enthusiasts who are writing, workshopping their own new original musical. And so they're kidnapping prospective people they're showing houses and putting them in a basement and subjecting them to this workshop musical they're doing. And so it turns out the most recent mother and daughter team that they kidnap are actually homeless, and they are tricking realtors into showing them housing by going inside of the house showings and unlocking windows and doors, and then coming back in there later at night for a place to stay.
Right.
So both their paths crossed. Anyway, had it completely written, had it completely cast, had a lot of different interested producing parties keeping an eye on it at the time. One of which, Mike Flanagan, who contributed to our first movie, All Your Friends Are Dead. He was like, I can't come on board anything right now, but I am happy to promote it online. And so he sent a series of tweets and stuff. Another person who flummoxed us because of how much we respect his work and look up to it and was inspiration was Edgar Wright. Regularly was retweeting and sharing stuff. And then Roger Avery, who again, growing up, Rules of Attraction was a pivotal movie for me. We got in contact with him, and he was like, he's like, I'm happy to promote it, and I hope you guys make your Kickstarter and blah, blah, blah. Those people supporting it and retweeting and reposting and sharing it on different platforms brought in $0.
Oh, no.
Like, not zero, but like the amount of eyeballs that got on it did not equal in funding. And so we are getting to the point, because Kickstarter is an all or nothing platform.
Yep.
I stupidly was doing interviews, not stupidly doing interviews, but doing interviews and all of our press stuff and everything that was being shared. Like Roger Avery was like, oh my God, Motel Hell meets Rocky Horror Picture Show, I'm in. And I was putting it out there. I was like, well, this is a horror musical comedy, like really hitting it hard. It's a dark horror musical comedy. I kind of found out in the crowdfunding world for micro budget horror movies, the group of people that give to those, who fund most of those, really don't want to see a horror musical comedy, or it's hard for them to hear.
Mm.
and just shell over the money. So during that time of licking my wounds and being like, well, by this date, if we haven't raised X amount of dollars, we gotta shut it down because we're gonna start rehearsing. People are gonna start having to come in for things. Things are gonna have to be starting being made with special effects. We're gonna have to start spending people's time and money that we don't have. So I'm not gonna do that. I had to contact everybody. Nick Hines, my producing partner, and I. We were like, hey, sorry, it's just not going to happen, and I don't want to string anybody along. I'm really sorry, and I understand if you're disappointed. I am as well. During that whole time in pre-production for Open House, a restaurant that existed in the world of Open House is called Sweetmeats, and it is a burger / Bob Evans kind of place where they focus on their meats, whether it be breakfast meat, lunch meat, or barbecue. Or hamburgers. And there was cannibalism in Open House. And there was actually a connection at the end that there was a familial connection throughout the whole movie that you were unaware of until the end. And I was like, hey, wouldn't it be great if we did a prequel to Open House that took place kind of in this like ambiguous 70s, just some years ago?
Right.
And it's about the origin of the restaurant of Sweetmeats and like where this family came from. But it was country music. It was like Jerry Reed, Don Williams, Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton country music. It wasn't Broadway music. And producer, friend, and partner Nick Hines and Mike Flincham and Chris Morris, they were like, that's a really good idea. And I was like, yeah. And I think I could write it pretty quickly because there's a lot of lore here and mythology that I can just pivot some of the things that we already have, make it a smaller production thing. I think we could do it for half the budget or a third of the budget. And I know the proof of concept I want to make because I kind of already have this iconography that we're going to use in Open House. I'm going to make it look like it's a grindhouse 70s drive-in movie porn / like weird like basket case horror movie.
Yeah.
And so I made this proof of or like a Troma movie. Like I mean basically I guess I'm gonna make it look like it's Troma.
Right on the side. Yeah.
Which I wasn't like fully thinking of at the time. And I made this proof of concept really leaning into the sleaze factor of it and just the dark comedy and the satirical nature and the absurdity of it. And I pitched it and I put in there that the movie was exactly that synopsis that I told you and the people that we were going to have on board. And luckily, one of the shooting locations, because for micro budget, a lot of things have to do with, well, do you have the money to pay the people for their time and their talent and locations? We had a restaurant that we were going to use for Sweetmeats for 2 days worth of filming for Open House. Went to that contact and I was like, hey, this project's not going to happen. Could we use your location for 8 days instead of 2 days? And he loved horror movies. And he's like, yeah, sure.
Nice. That's cool.
So that is how that kind of all pivoted. And because of I guess, I don't know if it's because of the proof of concept, if because we switched to Indiegogo. I don't know what it was, but somehow that connected more with crowdfunding and people who are interested in that kind of thing. Even before Troma came on board, Lloyd was someone that I, on a whim, like Edgar Wright or Mike Flanagan, reached out to on Twitter. And I said, hey, Lloyd, would love if you could share this and throw your support behind micro budget filmmaking. It's a horror musical comedy. He reposted it. He's like, happy to. This sounds amazing. And Ricky, if you'd like me to be in it, I'd love to film a cameo.
Sweet.
And, yeah. And so I was like, all right. And I already had this thing in the movie that was like this vacuum cleaner salesman that appeared on a Zenith small TV in the restaurant. And I was just like, well, this would be great. I'll just change it a little bit. And that's Lloyd. He can film it in front of a green screen. Should be easy as pie.
Right.
So then I sent Lloyd the part, and he was like, "This is great. Can I see the rest of the script?" And I was like, "Okay." I was like, maybe he's just safeguarding, just making sure this isn't like some like Nazi propaganda. Even though I don't know if Lloyd would be 100% against that.
Yeah.
And Troma.
Dang.
But I sent him the full script, and then
Yeah.
like a week later, he's like, "Hey, I'd like to have a meeting about seeing if you're interested in Troma acquiring the movie and distributing it, coming on as executive producers and distributing the movie." We were a week before filming. We had our financing. We were good to go. And so Lloyd's like, yeah, maybe it would help you guys out with the rest of your campaign if we came on board, which it did.
Yeah. Cool.
And the only thing I can say is every interaction that I've had with Lloyd, it's wild to get to that like third phone call where you have his name and number saved in your phone.
Oh yeah.
It pops up incoming call, Lloyd Kaufman. My favorite thing is, and I will tell this story about anybody, because if you know who Lloyd Kaufman is, you've seen his introduction to the movies beforehand.
Yep. I remember
this. B movie Stanley. This is how Lloyd Kaufman starts every conversation on the phone. He has to know how phones work. He knows caller ID. But you get a call from Lloyd and it says incoming call, Lloyd Kaufman. I go, "Hey Lloyd, what's going on?" He goes, "Lloyd Kaufman calling here, president of Tromaville, the creator of the Toxic Avenger." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I know it's you, Lloyd. I have caller ID. What's going on?" But then I've gotten to meet him now a few times, and just as genuine in person as he is over the phone, through email, and knock on wood, we've had nothing but a good experience. They haven't been like, "Oh, we need to see this or this, or you need to change this." The only thing Lloyd has given so far was the trailer. One of the edits we had didn't show us singing, and he was just like, "Hey, maybe you could show a scene of singing in this, considering you call it partly a musical." And I was like, "Yeah, that's fair. Well done."
Good point. Yeah, we've had Lloyd out for the Colorado Festival of Horror out here, so we've had him out as a guest. He's great. We've been able to showcase his hashtag Shakespeare Shitstorm, and next week his brother Charles is coming out. We're going to be screening Mother's Day for a post Mother's Day screening event.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely agree with your assessment of Lloyd. He's such a gem to talk to. We talked about opera, when he was out here. I had no idea he was into opera. I knew he was clearly into a lot of Shakespeare in theatrical stage performances.
So that's the one thing is there's 3 movies that are the most current under the Troma banner, besides the one they just announced that he's going to direct, possibly his last movie. Is there's Eating Miss Campbell, which I hosted the Q&A for and moderated the Q&A in Cincinnati.
Nice.
And another one that's going to be released soon is Curse of the Weredeer.
Oh, cool. A buddy of mine did the poster art for that.
I've been fortunate to see one of the latter edits, I think before some of the special effects got touched up, or the digital effects, and it's hilarious. But an interesting thing that is in all 3 of them is in our film as well, in Sweetmeats, there is a Shakespearean vibe.
Nice.
Which it's so bizarre because like I don't know, and Lloyd and I have not had this conversation, is there is a Macbeth story going on in Sweetmeats. And it's, I mean, if you are a Shakespearean person and you know the last name of Lady Macbeth, the family in Sweetmeats, that is their last name. So like that is one of like the only like hardcore nods that like if you
Right.
know you know kind of thing. But when I was watching Eating Miss Campbell, I was just like, oh holy shit. I was like, I wonder if Lloyd is really attracted to anything that is like Shakespearean influenced.
Probably so, which works out for, young filmmakers, right?
Yeah,
Um,
all the young filmmakers with a Shakespeare influenced horror musical comedy.
that's right. Yeah, it's in your blood. It's just nuanced, it's just
Yeah.
right there in the subtext. Yeah, I had the good fortune to interview Liam
Mhm.
Regan a couple weeks ago about eating Miss Campbell. So that was awesome. Turns out he comes out to Denver every now and then too. I was just like,
He
oh, damn it.
he was a treat too. I don't know if he tells every girl at the prom this, but after the moderation, he was just like, "Hey, man," he's like, "That is literally maybe the best Q&A I've ever had." And he's like, "And it's not the audience question. He's like, the questions you ask, like some of the shit that you picked up on." I'm like, "Yeah, like you and I are clearly cut from the same cloth of like
Yeah,
the shit we were subjected to slash sought out growing up."
right.
Another one that I think is perfectly purposely satirical, and it's right towards the beginning. Two of them actually right towards the beginning of the slasher boom are The Burning and
Mm,
Sleepaway Camp. I
right.
think both of
Right.
them are both more satirical of the genre, and that's why they stand the test of time than some of the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'd imagine there's something to be said about so many films that don't really provide that insight of satire, that have kind of come and gone, and don't
Mhm.
really have much to say about the genre. Still, though, it's like, again, going through the record store, always good to try and dig around and see what you can find out there that you haven't really seen.
Yeah, and go into don't be afraid of getting in a boat and going across the sea. Like not everything has to, I mean, not everything
Right.
should be American centric. Some of
Right.
the Australian horror movies are some of the
Ooh,
best. And of course, I mean, everybody and their mom by this time has access to giallos and
right.
Italian to Bava and to, every Umberto Lindsay, like everybody over there. Like I remember, it was the gates of hell for me
Ooh,
growing up.
nice.
I didn't know it as City of the Living Dead, and I didn't know that it was part of a trilogy. All I knew was the priest in the opening scene.
Yeah.
Me and my brother, we talked about this for years. The priest in the opening scene, the woman being buried alive, with Christopher George having to break open the casket, and then the woman just puking her intestines out.
Ooh.
And that's a movie that we thought we dreamed for a long time, which means we saw it at such a young age. And
Yeah.
he's 5 years older than me. We were doing Chicago's Music Box of Horror 24-hour festival
Hmm.
back when we both lived there. And this movie came on, City of the Living Dead, which we
Okay.
didn't clock as being the same movie that we grew up on, Gates of
Right.
Hell.
Right.
And so the movie starts playing, and we look at each other, and we're like, God, I feel like I've seen this before. Like,
Yeah.
does a woman get buried alive and then the scene happens? You're like, oh, holy shit. Like, wait, is this the movie where the woman pukes up her intestines and like it had like
Ooh.
shit was happening and we were just like, oh my God. I feel like someone who went through like a traumatic experience and like blocked it in
Oh
their
my God.
brain and found that like one other person who could cooperate.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I always love watching movies like that. There's occasionally you know the ones that you do remember, like especially as a kid, um, and not, might not necessarily have aged well. Like I remember as a kid, seeing like Ghoulies.
Yeah.
And I was like, back then, I was like, holy crap, this terrified me. I ran and hid under the bed, and like back in the early 2000s, I saw it on DVD at Best Buy. I'm like, oh my god, I got to get this. I haven't seen this since I was a kid. I sat there and watched it. I'm like, holy shit, this is the biggest piece of crap I've ever seen.
And then if you want even worse,
yeah,
Ghoulies 2 goes to college.
yep,
Is they go to
no,
college in
yeah,
2?
yeah. Yeah, it was a Blu-ray package, so it had the first three movies on one DVD.
Always a good sign.
Yeah, yeah, and
Always a good sign that the transfer is going to be just as good as the VHS tape, but worse because now it's digitized.
right, right. So yeah, sitting there watching that, like the first one, you see these cool monsters, but they're single-handed puppets. So
Mm-hmm.
you see the performers like the imprint of their fist on their bellies and stuff, and it's just like, oh,
You get the ones
man.
that don't hold up, and then you get the ones that like do, but maybe are better than what you remembered. Like I feel like The Gate, which
Right.
that movie I feel like still holds up. And
Demon
like when
Dwarf,
I was a kid, I was like, oh, this is a cool kids movie. But
right?
then as I get older, I'm like, oh, this is one of the cooler, even though two is not nearly as good. Um, this is a good like little Satan worship, like
Yeah,
Goonies meets Satanic Panic.
yeah. That the gate was fantastic. Well, I remember as a kid, and it kind of freaked me out. And then as an adult, it's just like, oh my god, I can't stop looking at this thing. It's the creature effects and the little this was it the force perspective too that they
Mhm.
used in there. It's like, oh my god, this is so cool. So I would watch that and like Lord of the Rings, movies because
Yeah.
of those.
Yeah, the animated ones.
Well, the animated ones, but I'm talking about like the actual live action force
Okay.
perspective in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
live action movies because they used a lot of the same techniques.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my god, that's so cool.
Do
Um,
you remember the name of it? And it's gonna drive me crazy because I know I have it in my collection. I think on a Blu-ray, and the transfer is not very good. But
mhm,
I used to watch a lot of those Troma or
mhm.
Troma acquired or D-list horror movies on USA Up All Night with like
Oh
Ron
yeah,
and
I
Gilbert
remember that
Gottfried.
show.
What was the anthology one where the wraparound is the devil and God on a train, each
Oh
telling a story, and
yep.
there's a pop band filming
Oh
a music
yeah.
video
We
on
you
the
know
train.
we just watched it in the theater in the last year. We've got a fantastic um, uh, platform called Scream Screen, and they were the theme for the night. Oh, in fact, it was Joe Bob Briggs that
Okay.
hosted that night. He came out to Denver, and that night his theme was trains, movies with trains in it.
Yeah.
And so one was a train movie with Peter Cushing, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
His
I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I fell asleep probably halfway through it, and then
I think they're both anthologies.
what's up?
I think those are both anthologies. The Peter
Oh,
Cushing one and because the one I'm talking about, though, that's the wraparound. And because Richard Mole from
yeah,
Night Court, Bull, he's in two out of the three.
yeah, the short stories. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and for that night, that was that might be the case, but
Night Train to Terror?
Night Train. I think it was the Night Train to Terror because
Something like that.
that's so easy to confuse with like Night Train with Jamie Lee Curtis in
Terror
terms of the
Train.
title. Terror Train. That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Um,
with Copperfield,
yep,
with David
Copperfield.
Copperfield.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah. I totally yeah. They use the pop band as kind of these little weird bookends in between each
Yep. They keep on
short
playing this song
story.
over and over again. And it's God and the Devil almost playing like this chess game with these stories that were clearly filmed as not part of this anthology.
Yep.
But they wrote this God and Devil thing
Yep.
to put around whatever bullcrap
Yeah.
they had in a can that they couldn't sell for either television or overseas.
Yeah. it was delightfully bonkers, and I think that one was supposed to be for a whole different movie, if I
Oh, I'm
remember
sure.
right.
Because the God and the Devil, the guy who's I think playing the God's definitely younger, wearing a white beard. They
Right.
open up the window, and that's how they see the movie. They look out into the star,
Right.
the star curtain, whatever that's in front of them. That someone's like pulling back and forth to make it look like it's a moving train, and then the movie appears on that.
Yeah, I think they ended up having to compile that together for financial reasons because I think part of that was filmed in Canada and if I remember right, and I could be wrong, but if I remember right, it was something to do with the fact that if you don't complete have a completed film, within like
You
a week
lose
or
it.
two, yeah,
Yeah,
you're gonna lose the financing or the investors. And I think the federal government was involved. They're
that's
like, "Hey, we need the money back." I was like, "Oh, okay. You want a fucking finished film?" And just slapped a bunch of stuff together, and it's like, "Here you go."
I'm
But
not saying that like I I do filmmaking like that, but I'm definitely inspired by that stuff. And even so
yeah,
much so, somehow infusing the pop culture that existed. I mean, I was born in 85, so I was only 2 during Dream Warriors, but I was heavily influenced by those years, like catching up with that in my video store and like going back and being like, man, you have Alice Cooper's Man Behind the Mask, you have Goo Goo
right.
Dolls on Freddy's Dead, you have Dream Warriors, you have Freddie hosting MTV's as a VJ.
Yeah,
Like, I have all of this like weird juxtaposed pop culture and horror and comedy and theatricality in my brain. The miniseries, like in the 90s for horror, like with what Mick Garris was doing on TV, anything
yeah,
Stephen King. Um, I had this like event mind where like I want to use a lot of those different pieces to be like, okay, can I string them together for some
mhm,
narrative function with an
right,
emotional, character driven story? And
right.
that, I mean, that's what Sweetmeats is. That's why I'm so interested to see, like, just sit back and being like, if at any point is this movie, are there going to be people that just go, nope, and just like get up and like,
I
not into this?
Yeah, I think with horror in general, like that's a genre that's just so incredibly accessible. You can put out almost any quality of film in that genre, and people are it's gonna find its audience. Now, it might take a long time. We were talking about some films are having a resurgence. It's,
Yeah.
a lot of times it's nostalgia, and other times it's just now hitting with an audience.
And then you have those movies that it blows my mind that either were never released
Mhm.
or very limited release and then
Right,
lost for years, like Deathbed, The Bed That Eats,
right, right.
Miami Connection, Samurai
Yeah,
Cop. Like
yeah,
you have these movies, it's just like, how? Like,
right.
well, you have all this other garbage, like the different genre. I mean, I'm gonna call them garbage, but I say that with like
Endearment.
affection. Yeah, like you have this garbage, but again, those like if anything, like each movie that we do, All Your Friends Are Dead, which is on Tubi, cost
Cool.
us $5,959 to make. Sweetmeats is going to cost us probably around $20,000. Not saying like we need a lot of money, but like
Mm.
if someone were to give us $50,000, we have a Jean-Claude Van Damme 90s action movie esque idea that would
Cool.
be a trilogy in one movie.
Ooh.
So it would be three
Huh.
30-minute movies, three
Yeah.
30-minute installments. Not like you're missing anything, not like Grindhouse, but we
Right.
would do three 30-minute condensed movies to do this like like this ridiculous early 90s Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Brandon Lee, oh
Nice.
God, even like canon films like American Ninja,
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that, because my filmmaking partner Nick Hines and I, we both kind of grew up on those movies,
Hmm.
and we were like, all right, we could make an action comedy version of one of those where we would play it deathly serious, but like we're not going to shy away from how like ridiculous some of those movies were for
Right.
like the best reasons.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. Um, yeah, Ricky. Yeah, I know you guys are still fine tuning the post production and everything. It sounds like things are about to wrap up in the next few weeks or month or so. Um, yeah, and Troma's handling the distribution, correct?
Yeah, they're gonna the one of the nicest things about the deal that we arranged was that they had to honor everything that we currently had offered on Indiegogo.
Cool.
That was the one thing that I was just like, hey, yeah, I would love to have the beginning of my movie say a Michael Hurst and Lloyd Kaufman Troma
Yeah.
film production presents, and that skyline that
Right.
hasn't changed since like 1978. Like, I would love that. But I in no way, especially having a failed campaign, am I going to turn my back on all these people who I don't know who are supporting the movie. And so I was like, I just need to be able to say that we can honor all the
Right.
Blu-rays, the limited amount of Blu-rays that we're gonna do, and or the other perks. And Lloyd was like, "Yep, I completely agree." And I hope, like said, he's like, "I hope Troma being involved, me being involved, will get some more eyes and ears on it to get you guys the budget that you need to execute basically your vision."
Cool. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. Is there any plans or any release date in mind?
Um, the only, and I swear this sounds like a carnival barker, the only guaranteed release date for you as a viewer to see Sweetmeats on your screens and in your hands is if you pre-order I think there are 195 left of the limited edition Blu-ray on Indiegogo. Once those are gone, those are going to be delivered 100% by October 2024.
Cool.
Beyond that, I cannot guarantee. Knowing Lloyd, I don't know where it's going to premiere, when it's going to.
Mm-hmm.
When it does, after that happens, whatever festivals, I'm pretty sure he's going to be okay with us doing a premiere in Cincinnati, my hometown, at the
Nice.
Esquire Theater. But I couldn't possibly tell you when that might be.
Oh, that's cool. So just stay tuned. I've got the Indiegogo campaign scrolling down below. So people, get a screen grab of that, and go and get your limited edition Blu-ray.
Feels like this feels like a QVC. Like I wish I had like on a stand, like a home shopping network. Like, well, look around here. Like, what? How many are gone now? Oh, we've only got 10 left. We only got
Only
10 left.
Oh, now we're eight. We're at
Oh,
eight.
no, it's like, you know what? I'm gonna throw in the koozie for the next 4 people.
Who wants a mouse pad?
And there's just a guy sitting behind the scenes, just cutting up a piece of carpet to make these mouse pads.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, with a lot of little nicks. Damn it.
What's the most taken by surprise horror movie that you've watched recently?
Taken by surprise horror movie that I've watched recently.
Like that you like didn't maybe have as big. I mean, I know it's hard not to have expectations for things nowadays.
Sure.
But that like you watched and you were just like, oh, that was better than I expected.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think most recently it would be actually it was a friend of ours film. But it was a filmmaker by the name of Anthony Cousins. He did a found footage movie called Frogman.
Yeah.
And
great poster.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's you can see it from across the room. I mean, it draws you in. And I don't like found footage movies. I just
same.
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of Blair Witch Project, and
I think mine is I get a little motion sickness, so I have a hard time like actually like looking at the screen and focusing. But yeah, there's something about that aren't never got into the Paranormal Activities.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those. I did one of them did actually give me a nightmare. So I'm like, okay, there's something there, clearly. But Frogman was one that I was very surprised because it was fun. It had a lot of humor in it. It actually had some payoff, and typically, the found footage movies that I've experienced don't really have payoff.
Mhm.
They just kind of, sometimes they just meander, and
Which is interesting because found footage movies are presented almost like documentaries,
right.
but the the people who end up helming the found footage think that documentaries have a naturalistic end and aren't constructed to fulfill a narrative or a POV. Like,
Hmm.
but found footage will be like, oh, that's how we found the tape. It's like, well, someone found it and edited it and put it together and put it out there.
Yeah,
Like, so,
yeah.
like,
There's clearly cuts,
yeah,
so
like, so give
yeah,
a, it's,
yeah.
is that Poughkeepsie tapes? Poughkeepsie tapes doesn't just like end, does it? Do they?
I don't know.
I think,
That one I didn't actually see. There's been a couple like horror themed mockumentaries that
mhm.
actually are pretty good. They're usually a little bit more
Yes,
comedic
sorry.
and
When I
everything
mean,
too.
yes, when I say documentary, I mean because anything
Yeah,
that is documentary style, regardless if there's humor or not, is
right.
technically a mockumentary. So, like Late Night with the Devil, I would
Yeah,
actually say
so good.
is a mockumentary,
Yep.
and I mean, the nitpickiest of notes, which I don't. My friend and I were talking about our nitpicks of that, and I don't think they're any of the ones that anyone else is nitpicking. So we're like, we don't even think that they're like we have anything against the movie because all the other love it, hate it, like stuff that people are talking about are my dumb nitpicks.
Yeah.
Um, have nothing to do with like anything that is like the hot button thing that people are talking about right now, as far as that movie goes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we really enjoyed it, but I think I enjoyed it at parts that most other people didn't really pick up on either. But yeah,
Agreed, and I think that's maybe just the pedigree of, like, what you have seen,
yep,
going into it. Like, if you grew up on, like, The Devil a Daughter and some of those, like, other like, the Blood on the Beast's Claw or,
yep,
some of those other cult or satanic movies, there was just little things of indicative, like Rosemary's Baby, that I was just like, "Oh," like, people I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but, people are
Devil's
losing their
Rain.
minds. Devil's
That's
Rain is
so good.
so good.
Yeah.
God, Mephisto's Waltz, uh,
Ooh,
that's, Alan Alda, that's a fantastic one.
nice.
Gosh, yeah, I love a good, Satan worshiping movie, but,
Oh yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Late Night with the Devil, when the electric goes out,
Hmm.
I think that's when Jack Delroy has the spear next to him. I think that's when he's killing everybody on stage around him. So then
That that
when the
makes
lights
sense.
when the lights come on and it turns into that Ghostbusters, like her head split, like
Yep.
spookies, where her head splits in half, and the energy and like the CGI really looks bonkers. And
Right.
then you get into his like Dante's the seven level, like the not seven, there's the levels of hell of him
Yep.
like going through purgatory in his own mind, being reminded of like this is the deal you made with the Grove, and these
Right.
are like Rosemary's Baby. When you realize the twist in that movie is that her husband sold her out to get a job, to get a better acting job, is
Yep.
amazing. Um, but when it's going through all that, people are complaining that the special effects look so bad in that scene. I think it's because it's not happening.
Right.
It's
I
just happening in his mind.
Yeah. I tend to like things that in terms of like even with like CG, like CG is like, oh, it should only look real, and I'm like, no, screw it,
It's fake.
stylize it, make it
Yeah.
fun. It's just a medium. It doesn't, it's not a rule. But people are just so trained to go and see films that it's got to look real, it's got to look realistic. It's like, it's so homogenized and boring. It's like, why do that?
Well,
It's like,
it's like you get like Toby Hooper, with the original Texas Chainsaw. Talk
Yeah,
about a movie that looks like a documentary and
yeah,
isn't. You for years, people have been seeing more in that movie that doesn't appear on screen. Like
right.
when she gets put on that hook,
Yeah,
you don't see anything. Like the worst thing you see really is when he's cutting his hand
yep.
like inside of the
Yeah,
vein.
that's the only time that there's any actual blood drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in when you talk to people, and that's I think that's just the this how geniusly crafted, whether it's intentional or not, of them, making such a visceral film that gets underneath your skin. That is my favorite horror movie. I've seen it so many times, and every time I have nightmares about it.
I
So
think and I have seen people who it gets hyped up and they've seen other things and then they see it and it's just like, oh, well, if I'd have seen it before seeing these other things, maybe. But so I can't like speak to seeing it for the first time because I saw it as a kid. But
right,
yeah, for me, every time I watch it, I'm just like, God, like
yeah,
this movie feels wrong. Like it feels wrong, but not in like the Rob Zombie, like House of a
right,
Thousand Corpses or like Three from Hell.
yeah,
There's just something that just like feels like these are not actors. This
nope.
is not set decorated. This is ah
This is somebody's life. This is
yeah.
how they live. Yeah, and then I was also not quite, but almost equally appreciative of, um, but I didn't really attain this point of view until a little bit later in life. The sequel, which was
Mhm.
complete. I think it was a part satire, but certainly parody as
Oh yeah.
well. And
But
and
it makes sense. Like anybody who and I don't know now, like I would love to pick up some of the Fangorias uh
at that time,
of that time to
yeah,
just be like before and after. I don't know how much I don't remember Fangoria really like retroly like talking about like I remember them hyping up like a Texas Chainsaw 2 or like a Nightmare on Elm
yeah,
Street 2. But then
yeah,
after it happens, I don't remember them ever doing a follow-up being like, "Phew, that wasn't what we were expecting."
right,
Like if you're looking at Toby Hooper, what he's doing since the first Texas Chainsaw, all you have to do is watch Eaten Alive
yeah.
and be like, oh, yeah, Texas Chainsaw 2 makes plenty of sense.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. That was yeah. Eaten Alive was a little bit more of an absurdist film,
It's surreal. Like what we were
yeah,
just saying with Texas Chainsaw being lived in, and it is real. There's no way those are actors. There's no way someone paid to make the house look that way.
right.
Um, or just the leather face mask and the just all of it. Eaten Alive is the exact opposite. It looks
Yeah,
like a soap opera. It looks like like
soundstage.
yeah,
It was all clearly done on a soundstage too. I
and
mean,
it's clearly a choice.
yeah, yeah. It's That was the alligator
Yeah.
clearly very fake. Um, it was a nod to Jaws.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's so fun, and you get to see like Robert England as a young man.
As Buck, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah. And what's her name from Oh, The Hills Have Eyes? You get Kyle Richards.
Hmm.
You get Carolyn Monroe, which it's or
Right,
not Carolyn, Carolyn Jones. Carolyn Jones.
Carolyn
Um,
Jones.
oh, and then the main gosh, I'm blanking. My dad would be very upset. Um,
That's all right. You have a better memory than I do.
the Virginia, I think the Virginia, maybe not the Virginian, but old country western who's playing the lead. Who at that
Mhm.
time, there's so many of those has-been actors in the movie who are alcoholics who are like
Right,
they just need a job,
right,
and I think Toby Hooper purposefully went from making a movie with no one, obviously a college student out of necessity, but
right.
then Eaten Alive, there's the artifice of how it looks
Yeah,
and the people who are in it.
right,
Kyle Richards is art. She's part of the Richards family, and she's been in Halloween. You have Carolyn Jones, who's recognizable from Adam's Family. Robert England, maybe you don't have Billy and I can't think of earlier movie with him, and I don't think V had happened yet. But I think you had seen, like, he had been in like the Burt Reynolds movie. No, he kills. It's an earlier 70s where Burt plays a detective.
Oh.
And he kills him at the end of the movie. Burt decides he's not going to be a detective. He's going to go to France with his French prostitute girlfriend. And he goes to the liquor store to get this bottle of liquor that he loves that's super rare. And leaving the liquor store, it's getting held up by Robert Englund. And Bert's already given up his badge. And he's just like, I'm not a cop anymore. Fuck this. Like, and they're like, sir, help us. He's like, I'm off duty.
Done.
Robert Englund comes running out and shoots him.
Oh.
He runs into him, like runs by him and pops him. So anyway, so I think Tobe Hooper casting people that kind of had these familiar faces to go with the aesthetic that he was doing. Does the movie work? Obviously in the same experimental way as like Texas Chainsaw? No. But like it is definitely. And so I think those two movies are interesting. Most people want to watch Texas Chainsaw 2 as the companion piece. I think Eaten Alive a really good one. Yeah. If you want to see two screenwriters with almost completely different movies, Wicker Man, but it's written by the same person, Wicker Man and Alfred Hitchcock's Frenzy. Okay. Same screenwriter. Watch those back to back, and it's so interesting.
Nice. Ricky, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm always more than happy to nerd about horror.
Yeah. Oh, I think I've learned quite a bit, from you as well. You've got tremendous insights, and myself and everybody that's tuned in. We can't wait to see Sweetmeats. From you and your collection of co-conspirators and Troma.
The co-conspirators. I can't wait. I mean, obviously the premiere is going to be a fantastic time for the reasons I've said, but just to then, for the brief amount of time that Lloyd is going to be shilling Sweetmeats and be going around and being like, all right, everybody, Lloyd Kaufman here for Troma. Here's Sweetmeats. It's sweet and it's meat.
That sounds very much like Lloyd. Yep. You don't even have to write the script.
He's not acting.
That's him. Yeah, most definitely. Oh, Ricky, thanks so much for coming on the show. And for everybody out there, make sure to go to the Indiegogo. Get your early copy of the Blu-ray. There's only a handful left. And make sure you support amazing young filmmakers like Ricky here as well. And Ricky, stick around for a few minutes while we sign off. But again, appreciate you being so generous with your time.
Thank you so much.
And to everybody that tuned in, thanks so much, guys. And, of course, to our sponsors, to Mutiny Information Cafe. If you're going to start a revolution, make sure you're caffeinated. And, of course, our friends at Hellfire Entertainment. Thanks for rebroadcasting us on your social media. And, of course, Groovy TV, Angela Joseph Productions, and my producers, Stephen Santa Cruz and Amanda Armstrong. Thanks for putting up with my shit. And, of course, to all of you guys out there, thanks so much, guys. Be good, be kind, keep each other, safe and happy. And, of course, stay spooky, everybody, till we meet again next time. Ciao.